Hey, okay, welcome to the February 2024 forecast. So I'm going to get right into the forecast. In case you're watching, later, then you want to get to right away start with the forecast. And then I have a couple of quick announcements to make. You're not going to want to miss that. And then after that, we will have any questions and answers and stuff like that. So let's get right to it because we lose people in the first 27 seconds if we don't get right to the forecast. So February. Now the thing about February is this: we don't have that kind of major sort of big aspect. We don't have eclipses. We don't have that kind of stuff going on in February, right? So let's keep that in mind. We don't have that sort of energy going on. What we have is a sort of low level buzz going throughout the month. And I think that it's most likely to be a factor for people who are we deal with this individually. I'm sure lots of stuff is going to happen in the collective. It always does. But I think that the feel for this month has a lot to do with us personally. And if you needed a simple mantra that applies to everybody to get you through this month, that would be bad. I'd be out of business because astrology is all about doing things for individuals. But if you needed to have a mantra that worked for everybody, it would be something like this: break out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, mix things up a little bit. Okay, this is the time we have a lot of Uranian aspects. The planet Uranus is very busy this month. We have a lot of Aquarian stuff going on. Uranus is the Aquarius planet, so it's like a redundancy. We get it in a couple of different directions. So we're looking for this sort of freedom, openness. We're looking for maybe a bit of revolution and quick changes and things like that in our lives this month. And we're probably going to feel it mostly as a kind of internal sort of tension, but I don't mean tension in a bad way. Let's call it the sort of motivating tension, is about the way that I would sort of sum it up. That's kind of the theme for this month. Break out of your comfort zone, in part because that's how you grow and that's how you expand and that's how you evolve. And in part because your comfort zone is liable to not be that comfortable. You maintain the status quo, but if the status quo isn't maintaining itself, there's a bit of an issue there. So what we're looking for over here is to break out of the comfort zone, challenge yourself, do something new. Now let's look at how all the planets are going to sort of work to go with this. First of all, on the 2nd of February, we have the last quarter moon in Scorpio. It's 13 degrees Scorpio. And we would be looking something that may have been, especially if you have planets around 13 Scorpio, very close to 13 Scorpio, something that kind of popped up for you last May might be coming to, let's call it a resolution or at least a conclusion at this time, right around that last quarter moon on February 2nd. That's a Friday. Um, the It falls on Groundhog's Day, which is midwinter. Although if you're in like Ireland and I think maybe England, they kind of count this as the beginning of spring. They get to rush things a little bit. Groundhog Day is a mid-season holiday, and mid-season holidays, I think I don't know. Groundhog Day. I mean, it's absolutely, it's a ridiculous American custom to see if the groundhog comes out and sees his shadow. It's cute. It's a cute but ridiculous custom. I mean, I'm glad it's there and all that. Um, it is Candlemas as the actual original holiday. It is one of the few that May Day doesn't gets a little bit of play. The middle of summer one on August 1st. Everybody's out. It's August 1st. Who really cares what day it is, right? It's the summertime. And then the big kahuna of the mid-season holidays is Halloween, All Souls Day, right? That's so we're kind of at one of those points. It's sort of a pivot point. It's the middle of winter for those of us that are looking at things that way. Um, So it is, it's a last quarter moon. It kind of suggests a little bit of sort of, wrapping stuff up. Last quarter moon in Scorpio. It has a little bit of that feeling of wrapping things up. One thing that happens at this time of the year is we start tending towards the springtime. It is by no stretch of the imagination that we're there already, but it's kind of like we start to feel winter is gonna give way sooner or later. There's not much to go on. Last quarter moon, at some point in time in the next month or so, we're going to sort of come out of the wintry shell. And I think that, this month is kind of preparing us for that. All right, let's get back to the astrology of this. We have on the 5th, Mercury enters Aquarius, giving us more of this Aquarian Uranian energy that is going to be vibrating all month long. And what does Mercury do? The very first thing he does, he's in the sign for like an hour, a couple of hours, and he meets with Pluto, who's still hanging out at 0 degrees of the sign. Now, Mercury-Pluto aspects, this is usually what I would describe as speaking truth to power. You have a conjunction there, right? The cosmic messenger meets with the god of the underworld, right? This is a time when we speak what's on our mind. We have our ideas. In the sign of Aquarius, we're not really looking that much at what I would call, it's about me. It may be about, expressing your principles and saying, this is what I've got to say, and this is what I really think is true. Delivering this message to whoever you feel it needs to be delivered to. That's a big part of this. But it is, it is a little bit of a collective message. It's not so much, this is what I want. It's more like, this is what I think is right. Of course, you may be delivering the message, but then again, you may be getting the message as well. Around this time, we have, talk about getting like messages across, right? We also have Pallas Athene, the truth teller asteroid. Pallas, the goddess of wisdom who holds a spear, right? This is you're going to hear what I have to say, enters into Sagittarius, the very belief driven sign, right? Very much about beliefs, not ideals, but beliefs. You can meditate on the difference. And the first thing she does, of course, is connect with Mercury. Well, actually, it connects with Pluto, right? So we have, again, this sort of what I believe, what the ideals are, they're sort of coming out over here. This is this sort of big picture stuff, right? We're communicating big picture stuff as the month begins. Ceres, the Earth planet, the higher octave of the moon, goes into Capricorn on the 7th. Now, Ceres was part of that Pluto, Saturn, eventually Jupiter conjunction back in 2020, back in the beginning of 2020. Ceres didn't get a lot of play for that. If you kind of look at how things have been going in terms of the Earth and the various environmental challenges and resources and things like that, maybe Ceres should have gotten a little bit more credit for that, or I suppose I mean to say blame. Anyways, the planets set things up and we deal with them the best we can. And I think that Ceres had her fingerprints on this, and we're getting a little bit of a redo now. We'll have to see what happens. That's what we're going to say about that. Okay, so yeah, and again, it's a good point in the comments there that Uranus stations direct the day that I'm doing this on the 27th of January. And that is sort of like, that's like the fanfare, the heralding of this whole Aquarius season. Well, Pluto and the sun going into Aquarius last week was pretty significant as well. Now, this is another level of it. This is something that carries us into February. I'll take a little sip of coffee here because I'm going to, excuse me. We're going to get a little bit more personal about things. Also on the 7th, Venus, now in Capricorn, Venus will make a trine to Uranus, who's in her home sign of Taurus. And also they're going to make a grand trine with partnership asteroid Juno. This is a real interesting grand trine because Venus and Uranus are kind of a little bit saying, let's make some changes, let's make some adjustments, let's do things a little bit differently. Whereas Juno out there in Virgo is a little bit more reserved. And yet somehow or another, it feels like we can kind of make things work out. So right around the 7th, as we have all of this activity going on, we're still feeling that, Mercury Pluto thing. This would be a time when you might make adjustments in relationships, right? This is, which actually echoes to the end of January when we had some interesting kind of connections as well between Mars, Uranus, Mercury, and Juno. Right? So we're getting these opportunities in, and these are like with Juno, it's romantic relationships. With Venus and Uranus, it's any kind of, it's even just socializing. It's any kind of relationship, business partnerships. But with Juno in that picture, it works a little bit extra for romantic partnerships. Keep that in mind. It might be good to do Valentine's Day a week early this year. Just saying. Just saying. On the 8th, although maybe not, because on the 8th, the sun is going to go ahead and square Uranus. And that is, again, this is, the sun is in Uranus's sign of Aquarius, squaring Uranus. This is a time, asserting independence. This is like this is what I need to do for me. Very much the theme of this month. Again, making changes. It's not the status quo. Now we're coming into the new moon on the 9th. And that strongly suggests that it may be a time when we're more inclined to end things, cut them off, bring stuff to a conclusion. So that would be the time that you say, I've had enough of this. I'm quitting my job. I'm having enough of this relationship. I'm done with you. That kind of thing. You're going to want to consult your moon, your inner stuff, because this energy can certainly get you to make rash decisions. Although, if you've been waiting to make a big decision or a big move, especially towards bringing something to a conclusion, this time around the 8th and the 9th, notice how we have this energy that starts like, I'm telling the truth, I'm making adjustments. If it doesn't work, But again, this is a time when, just think about it, we want to do our own thing. We want to do what we feel we need to do for ourselves. Mercury around this time is squaring Jupiter, which essentially just means we're going to tell you exactly what's on their mind. There's not much of a filter with Mercury square Jupiter. The signs are very good and productive. Some people are going to just shoot their mouths off, but that's always the thing. But I think that more or less this is going to be, a measured kind of speaking your mind. It's a big thing all month long, isn't it, with speaking your mind? And you're going to see that there's more of that to come. But it is certainly a theme for this time. Mercury, very strong, very principled. Again, you're speaking your mind, but maybe you're just kind of telling people what, the truth is, as you see it. On the 13th, Mars, the cosmic warrior, enters Aquarius. Mars in Aquarius this is like, fighting for an ideal. Again, fighting for an ideal. This is what we have going on. And the first thing he does is meet with Pluto. And Mars-Pluto conjunctions, I don't care what sign they're in, Mars-Pluto conjunction have got a lot of energy about them, a lot of drive, a lot of push, a lot of force. It may be idealistically themed. It may be backed up by ideals, but there's a lot of force involved in this. Okay. As with the rest of the month, as with this entire month, with all this Uranian Aquarian energy, this buzzing going on, this sort of, it may be a little hard to sleep, by the way. With all this buzzing going on, some folks are going to be a little ornery, right? This is an energy, and in fact, you have to let this energy out, right? If you just kind of contain it inside, it's going to be pretty awful. You have to let it out. I'm suggesting do something for yourself, break out of routines, Go have some fun, just go by yourself, great time for meditation and all of these types of things as well, because, you can sort of get up to a higher level of things. But on the other hand, again, trying to maintain the status quo, trying to keep everything in that little box, likely to be a bit of a problem, likely to be hard to do. And you're able to feel, you know, mm. On the 16th, Venus joins the party in Aquarius. We got everybody in Aquarius. Now we got Mercury, we got the Sun, we got Venus, we got Mars. Everybody's in Aquarius. Not everybody. Lots of people are in Aquarius. And Venus in Aquarius very much, next 3-4 weeks, very much favors a kind of socialization in groups. It's a great time, it's a great time to go to an astrology meeting. It's a great time to, connect with people who share your ideals. It's a good time for friendship. And maybe Venus in Aquarius isn't all that much about romance. It could be quite a bit about friendship. And, do what you can, do what you want to do. I'm not here to tell you not to have a romance, but I'm just saying Venus in Aquarius, sort of favors a little bit more open and yet idealistic view of things. Okay, we could riff on that for a long time, but I'm not gonna. Next up, at around the same time, we're coming to the first quarter moon and Mercury squares Uranus. Now, Mercury square Uranus, this is like, from the 15th to the 18th, have your pen and paper or whatever that thing is that you put your notes on and stuff. Brilliant ideas, right? Quick-witted, rapid communication. There's no problem associated with it, but it's rapid fire. It's quick. It's like, it's like, you should engage brain before operating mouth. May happen here, may not happen. There is very possible that it's going to just be about shooting your mouth off and saying the first thing that comes into your head. Or other people will say the first thing that comes into their head and you have to hear it. But more or less, this is one more aspect that is all about rapid processing. It is about getting a great idea, a brilliant idea. Can you ground it? Maybe. I would think, with Uranus in the earthy sign of Taurus, I think you probably could ground it. So we'll have to see how that works out. But keep an idea. Sometimes ideas come. Sometimes you get this brilliant flash of insight. It may or may not ground well. But you know what? Sometimes it's just fun to have a really good flash of insight, or somebody make a good comment someplace or have an interesting observation. It doesn't have to turn into anything. On the 17th, so figure the 16th and the 17th, maybe into the 18th, Venus meets with Pluto. The annual meeting of Venus and Pluto this year in the sign of Aquarius. Here we have a kind of partnerships and connections and values and aesthetics of all kind get real serious, right? This is a bottom line kind of time when it comes to any sort of connections with people, socializing, when it comes to romance, when it comes to business partnerships. This is bottom line. What's the real deal? It's happening in Aquarius. So again, we have this idealism going on. We have this kind of, what is it, what's on with the bigger picture? What do I think is right becomes a big issue here. Not so much what do I want, but what do I think is right becomes a big issue here. This is the way things should be. I can handle a lot of flexibility as long as I get this core need. That's that sort of theme that's going to be quite prominent in the middle of the month. Again, the middle of the month is really, it's got stuff going on. Now on the 18th, the sun goes into Pisces. We start to maybe take a little step back from this Aquarian energy and bring some of the Piscean vibe to things. Well, we spent a good part of 2023 in the Piscean vibe, the Neptunian Piscean vibe. So it wouldn't be the end of the world to stay away from it for a little bit, but we're going to come back in. Now we really are in the last sign of winter. It's the mutable sign that's bringing us towards the equinox. It's a good time to start thinking about the fact that we're about a month away from the first eclipses. We're coming into eclipse season in late March and April. And so this is maybe a time to kind of, I would, rest, recharge, maybe some of this jangly energy that's been going through February, take a little bit of a break from it. Although with the full moon on the 24th, it's going to still be a time of a lot of activity. We feel the end of the month is going to have this full moon vibe. It's the full moon in Virgo. Now, the full moon in January was in Leo, party moon of the year. It's Leo, it's a full moon, sun's in Aquarius. Let's go have a good time. Full moon in Virgo. Well, go to the organic food store and cook yourself a nice healthy dinner or something along those lines. It's probably a really good idea, to tell you the truth, a really good idea to look at this in terms of reflecting on health and well-being and looking at just say, look, lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle changes would I want to make, or potentially what sort of lifestyle decisions have I been making that were not so good. We'll talk more about it when we actually get to that full moon in the weekly forecast, but I want to say that it's a nice full moon, but it's not quite as. At the same time, though, we have Venus conjunct Mars and square Jupiter again. And this is really the time between the 24th and about the 28th. We have these various things going on. Venus conjunct Mars, square Jupiter. And the feel of this is, Venus and Jupiter get along great. That's just fun and good. Mars and Jupiter, we're going to put things into action. Again, this is very, action oriented kind of aspect. It's not just you feel what's going on. It's very action oriented. So that's the month. Lots of Aquarian, Uranian energy, lots of a push for change, very active. Even in Pisces season, very active piece of time. Okay, this is a very busy month, February. Not so much the focus on the collective, maybe earlier in the month with the Pallas and Ceres changing signs, but more or less this is about what we individually do. Not that the collective, it's too complicated to talk about that whole business and stepped in wide terms. But individually, we're looking for making changes, breaking out of the box. Okay, quick announcement. First of all, tomorrow, that is Sunday, January 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time, I will be speaking for NCGR Sacramento, and you can go look them up. I think you got to look at their Facebook page to find out the information, or you can just Google NCGR Sacramento and then put my name in. It'll be a forecast for the year, and I've given a forecast for the year here on YouTube, but it's, less astrological. If you're into the real astrology of it, you might enjoy this talk I'm giving. I'm also starting in February, on February 21st, I'm also giving a masterclass on astrology. It's kind of a little bit of an introduction to astrology, but it doesn't, not, it'll be good. It's like $30 for like 7 weeks. I mean, there may be something coming a little bit later on in the thing, but it's a good deal. The link for that is at the bottom in the description over here. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be good. We're going to go through the basics of things. You'll get a good grounding in astrology. It's it's really going to be worthwhile. It's going to be fun. I recommend it. What am I going to do, right? Okay, so those are the two announcements. Let me see what's over here. Heather says it's also embolic, derived from ewe's milk, as lambs are being born. Huh, that's in February. Lambs are born in February. Huh, okay. Friska, hi. Uranus stations direct. Very curious. Well, yeah, this is, we're on the 27th of January, Uranus stations direct. And really, this whole month, we're just dealing with those Aquarian times. Good morning, Laura. Chiron and Taurus in the fourth at 25 degrees. I'm nervous about what Uranus could do when it passes through it. No, I'm no chiropractor. I don't really understand the Chiron thing all that well, but I would not worry about it much. Folks have had folks that were born in the 70s had Uranus going over their Chiron, in the last decade, and it's you know what? Look at that as very positive, and look also too to see what the relationship is between your natal Uranus and your natal Chiron. Um, One thing I have noticed is that when Uranus and Chiron get together, it tends to be very good for the energy healing. Reiki. I call it the Reiki aspect, sort of not just Reiki, but that's the sort of the theme. When you have Mercury, not Mercury, when you have Chiron and Uranus together, very frequently you get a kind of energy healing sort of vibe. So if you have it in your natal chart, I find that people that have that aspect in their natal chart for a good part of the 20th century, Uranus and Chiron were going into opposition with each other. And folks that have that benefit from energy healing quite a bit, and they often make good energy healers. Right? That's something. And I think that if you look at this aspect in transit, it may be a time when you're opening up to that or furthering your own experience of energy healing. So let's look at that as being a positive thing. Nothing is going to happen that is going to be bad. I'm 85% sure of that. 5 planets in the 11th house starting at 5 degrees in Saturn. In Saturn, I'm not sure what I mean. What an 11th house. What sign? Mars return. Mars return. February 2nd. February 2nd. What is February 2nd? Oh yeah, February 2nd is Imbolc and Candlemas, right? It's got a lot of names. Chiron return. You're having your Chiron return now. I understood Chiron a little better after my Chiron return. It was kind of like, oh, that's what that's kind of about. I'm not, I'm not overly dialed into that Chiron energy. I honestly think Chiron has a lot to do with the body, and but it does it. I think Chiron in the natal chart shows where something goes wrong fairly early in life, either by your own experience or perhaps by observation of things going wrong for other people. And it kind of, keeps you a little bit edgy about that, as opposed to Saturn, it's sort of a similar vibe, except for Saturn, you don't have to know what happened. There's no event necessarily. You just feel like, oh my God, I don't want to go near that Saturn thing. With Chiron, you kind of know. And I think when you get to your Chiron return, you sort of see how this is played out in your life, and there you go. But as I said, I'm not that dialed into it. Let's see. 5 planets in Aquarius. First planet Saturn in Aquarius. Oh, 5 planets in Aquarius is 5 degrees. It's going to take a long time for Pluto to get to 5 degrees. Yeah, it's going to take a while for Pluto to get to 5 degrees. But I five, Saturn. Look, that Saturn is strong in Aquarius, right? It's his home sign, one of his home signs, and the changes that are going to happen. Plutonian changes are not always what you think they're going to be, and I would always remind people of the astrology student's dilemma when you look at potentially significant transit is, on the one hand, something may happen that would be awful, but the greater fear is that nothing at all will happen. Typically with Pluto on your Saturn, there could be a transformation in your career that could be, and it could be in the 11th house in Aquarius. It could be a kind of opening up and spreading out of your energies and so on. It could be quite a good thing. I would say that might be like a kind of busting you out of your shell kind of energy, although busting is not exactly right. It's sort of dragging you out of your shell, but it would probably signify some kind of transformation of career, which may not even, because it's Pluto and Saturn in the 11th house, it may not even have anything to do with you personally. It may be like, say, the place that you work. Your company gets sold to another company or something like that. Don't worry about it. When you get there, it'll be okay. Yeah, I think it has to do with the body. Chiron returns a comical. Perimenopausal. Well, yeah, there you go. That's true. It's the only thing, it's the only major aspect that's bopping around around the 50s, right? You have a lot of aspects from like late 30s to the mid 40s, of course, then there's 30s, then when you get to the late 50s, the only really early 50s transit that everybody gets at about the same time. Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't think about that. Although I think that, like, the whole menopause, I think, has always had a very wide distribution of age, a very wide age range. Interesting. Like, it's interesting that, the onset of puberty and the beginning of menstruation has drifted downwards in age. But, I think that there's still a lot of variety out there. I'm not sure Chiron is going to be just, well, I'm not, suggesting that it's just, but I'm not sure that is going to be the Chiron thing. Although, if Chiron is about the body and you are, menopausal or premenopausal or postmenopausal, you probably would be reflecting on it at that period of time. Okay, well, now we've talked about February, we've talked about my class, we've talked about the talk I'm giving tomorrow, we've talked about menopause. Doesn't get much better than that. So I will see you guys. Well, I'll see you guys at the weekly forecasts. You should make sure you watch the weekly forecast for January 29th. That's out already. Put that out on Friday afternoon instead of Saturday morning this week. So you can check that one out and come back every week for the forecast. And, next month we'll have another live thing. Thank you, Wendy. For a short calendar month, February will be busy. It will be busy. Yeah, it will be. Mostly, thank you, Christine. Mostly on the individual level. I'm pretty sure. All right. Bye-bye, guys.